lay down. Ugh. All right, I'm here. Oh, shit, I gotta turn this off. And what the fuck else do I need to do? I need to... gotta put a link up, and then I'm good to go. Okay, that's posted. So now we're rolling. All right. Okay, now here we go. Now we're set. What's up, buddy? Let me turn this down so I don't have to listen to myself. Okay, so where are we at today? I'm trying to go live for at least a little bit every day because I have a little bit of time to kill, usually between like 5:30 and 6:30. The fucking cat hair in my mouth. So I'm trying to make somewhere between 5:30 and 6:30 the time I go live every day. Maybe not every day because I can't imagine I'll have something to talk about quite every day unless I want to come on here and run my mouse and start some shit. Then I could definitely do it every day, but if I'm trying to not do that, it might be a little harder to do it every day. But speaking of running my mouth and starting some shit, I guess we'll start with that. It does seem like Samson's trying to make his way back into the reptile scene. I know he's been posting a lot more, been publicly commenting on other breeders' stuff. So we'll have to see how that all plays out. I did give King Snake a heads up. What's up, buddy? I see you, buddy. One of my cats wants me to pet them. Um, so I did give King Snake a heads up about it. Let him know that, he might try to sign up because he can't get on Morph Market. Um, so hopefully that doesn't become a thing, because that'll be kind of a, man, I just don't want to have to deal with that Samson shit again. I really don't. Um, so I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it plays out. And fucking cat hair. Um, there was some law down in North Carolina. I didn't get a chance to really look into it. Um, maybe I'll take a look, and when me and Spencer do a video, we'll kind of dive into it a little bit to see what's up and go from there. But yeah, hopefully, I know they've been gunning for North Carolina. Don't fuck with the mic. For a while, between North and South. I mean, there's always some bullshit legislation going on down there. There's also a lot of like people doing dumb shit down there too. That doesn't help. That also doesn't help. A fucking cat fucking with your mic. That also does not help. So hopefully that's not too big of an issue. Hopefully they can get that stuff taken care of and corrected. And yeah. So, but I wanted to. The main reason I got on here today and wanted to talk about was I finally got a pecan, and seeing it in person, because I've never seen one in person. I really need to see things in person to kind of get an idea of what you can do with it. And after seeing it in person, face value, I am going to without doing any breeding and seeing it for 5 seconds, I'm going to make a whole bunch of assumptions and judgments and claims that you can take to the bank because, I'm being sarcastic, but just based off first initial looking at it, I'm going to say pecan has a similar function to marble. That might seem weird, but and I don't mean like it's going to cause a bunch of crazy marbling. I don't mean that. I mean that it's a an exaggerating reduction type gene. You know how marble kind of thins out the black, sucks the back pattern in tight. Um, Kind of creates a little bit of goofiness on the sides where it'll either reduce down the rosettes and or if there's a more of a striping going on, it'll actually connect them. It can cause kind of an exaggeration that way as well. So I think you're going to see. Uh, I don't think you're going to see as much side striping based on what I'm seeing off of the pecan, and it might just be the one I got, but it also seems to reduce back diamond count and to get a lot of separation in there. So, and that can work a lot of ways. That can work. That can really help avoid some striping if it's actually reducing back diamond count. The problem is it seems to reduce thickness of black as well, so you are going to lose some contrast there. So I think pecan. I don't think there's do I think we need to make like pecan motleys? No. Um, do I think we need to even make pecan golden children? Probably not. Um, Unless it can really offset the color of the golden child and really change the color. So I gonna have to see because I mean the colors are similar, clearly similar to platinum, but I don't know if it's actually affecting color in the same way. So because I personally, like I said, I just got one today, so um, this is just my opinion of looking at a snake for 5 seconds. So and after looking at it for 5 seconds, I figured I better come on here and run my mouth. But I do after looking at it, and there's a decent amount of silver, at least on the one I have. So I do think there's some opportunity there for anything high silver. Um, Even as long as it's just a pattern thing and it's not going to overwhelm shit, kind of like Motley does. Like even something really strange like pecan genetic stripe might be interesting if it's going to thin out the black and change the colors and already it's going to have a lot of silver on the side. There's some things that I think that can be done with that gene that prior to actually seeing it in person I really thought would be kind of questionable. And one of the things is um, anthrax. Now I still think it's you're really going to roll the dice on it. I'm not saying go start an anthrax pecan project, but when I looked at it, with the amount of silver and how kind of the reductionist tendencies of anthrax, you might be able to get some pretty decently high silver anthrax, plus offset more to that gold color. So I'm not going to do that project just because I know that it can go either way, and if I make something ugly, the internet will give me shit because I always talk shit on people that make ugly stuff. So I don't want to take that chance. I mean, I will if nobody else does, but I think it'll be interesting. It'll be really interesting to see what pecan does with something like a high silver Karampa, high silver Kalatoa, and that'll give us some data because I don't know enough to know if the side pattern outlining uh, is I don't know exactly how it's messing with that. I can't. I'll have to do some breedings, obviously. But I do think that also something with the amount of silver I'm seeing on this particular animal, if you can offset the loss of black a little bit, even something like Rennet Ghost, you might get a really nice high contrast back pattern with the gold, a little bit of brighter color in the form of Rennet Ghost with the back, the Rennet Ghost color going down the back, and then with kind of that reduction or reduced side pattern situation, you could actually get some high whites. So I think if you could offset the black loss a little bit, put a white head on it with the Rennet Ghost, that you could make a very high white while at the same time very bright contrast Rennet Ghost. So if somebody wants to start that project, that project wouldn't take too long either. You just have to use the right Rennet Ghost. So, I mean, somebody that has like a Rennet Ghost Anthrax, that's like a breeder or something, they could probably try that and try to knock both out at the same time. Because I think Rennet Ghost Pecan, as long as you're not getting, as long as you can keep that reduced side pattern outlining, you're going to get a nice snake. Now it's not going to have as much black, purple, or whatever you want to call it, because the pecan does seem to be reducing it, but you should get some nice high whites and stuff. So, and a lot of anthrax can also sometimes limit pattern outlining. So, you put those together, you could make like a super high white pecan anthrax Rennet Ghost, or a super high white Rennet Ghost. There's some options there, or just in pecan anthrax, there is a possibility to make a really high silver anthrax. So, and if you want to add more silver, you can just use high silver Karumpa or Kalatoa with the limited pattern outlining. So I do think there's some potential there. The problem with pecan is it's going to go to like, the mainland crew is going to do what the mainland crew does, which is fucking Golden Child, Motley, what's the next one? Like OGS, which it is cool with OGS. And yeah, what else are they gonna do? They're gonna do what they always do. So I don't. Sunfire. I think there is a Sun Tiger. Isn't there a Sun Tiger already? Help me out, people. Didn't somebody make a really cool? There's nobody in the chats. Usually the chats are blown up. I know. Um, there was a Sun Tiger, and with it being a Black Reducer too, yeah, I could really see that. Yeah, is there? If somebody let me know, are there any Sunfire Pecan Motley Tiger? Where's Yeah? Someone send me a picture of that snake if they can. Um, is there any just pecan Sunfires? Because I want to see if there's like any kind of like epistasis gene blocking going on, for how there's a pattern reduction coming from both the pecan side and the Sunfire side, because Sunfire definitely kills a lot of the black on the sides, does seem to elongate back diamond, possibly limit back diamond, and definitely wipes out rosette count. So, and what I'm seeing with pecan, at least this one, you're getting. I don't want to say something similar, but you are. So we're looking at definitely a double reduction with that. So, yeah, that's why I'm curious how pecan, um, Sunfire, just those two together look. I think I saw that pecan Motley Tiger, but I don't know if I did. Someone send me a message on like Facebook or something with it. I thought I saw Aubrey post one that looked really good. But I can't remember what the fuck it was. I remember it was a fucking pecan. I want to say it was a pecan tiger, but I think it might have been pecan tiger het hypo. But the het hypo seems to fuck with stuff. That seems to fuck with stuff, too. Dude, you could go lay somewhere else. So, but I'm gonna try. I'm gonna start working on. I'm gonna start. What I don't. I'm not 100% what I'm gonna do with the pecan. Because based on its pattern, I could. Well, based on its color, I could see if I could color shift it with Halma, because Halma might be a good color shift. At the same time, adding a lot of black. So, did somebody send me something? Okay, yeah, Brian did. Let me take a look. Okay, so yeah, it did, and it did give a kind of a back pattern reduction, uh, and that's because that's essentially a quote unquote classic pattern tiger, but it's pretty reduced. And the reason it did that is because of the pecan nature of reducing back diamonds, and that's actually why I got that look. So yeah, it doesn't look bad, but that's going to be one of the issues um, with S morph is just the amount of black, and that's why like a pecan anthrax might lose too much black, but you also have the opportunity to possibly get some good high silver side. So everything's a give and take there. Somebody else's pecan tiger or pecan. That's a sunfire. That is not. That's just a sunfire. That is not a pecan tiger. Yeah. Yeah, I thought I saw a picture of that. So, because if I remember correctly, it caused kind of like a weird elongation with the tiger effect on the sides, the rosettes. So that actually might be pretty neat. But yeah, I mean, I'm definitely going to be. Where's my cursor? I'm going to be working more towards. I think I'm going to work more towards pecan um, mochas. I don't think I'm gonna. I don't think I'm gonna go too much. I don't know pecan. I just don't think mochas are cool with the high silver, and you don't need a ton because of how dark black they are to begin with. Get down, buddy. You can you can handle some thinner black and still get a lot of nice contrast because they're so dark they don't even really look albino. So off topic, between Superdorf's dwarfs mainlands, when they are the same length, how do you notice the difference in weight and girth? Yeah, it's a locality thing. Yeah, like even among the dwarfs, like Kiowatis are pretty thin. Like a 7 foot Kiowati versus a 7 foot Kalatoa, they're going to be two completely different diameters. That Kalatoa is going to be so much thicker. And the same with like Mindanao. Mindanaos are really thin. Um, like a 10 foot Mindanao versus like a 10 foot Ternate or a 10 foot Sola or even a 10 foot Solaire. They're just going to be like half the size. They're not going to be very. They're not going to be very thick at all. Let me see. Yeah, yeah, that's it. Because that's a really pretty snake. Um, Pecan tiger, and some of that effect too has got to be kicked in from that het hypo because that does seem to piss with back patterns. So I mean it did allow the rosette to stripe out. So it does seem like Pecan is possibly more of an exaggerator gene for rosette and more of a reductionist type gene for black on the back because that black on the back is pretty fucking thin. Where Well, I mean, the black isn't very thick either. Around the stripe, the black, I mean, it's got some two scales. I don't know if any. Yeah, it's all two scales. There's a couple little sections that it hits three, but those are just kind of like aberrant. So, but no, I think with how light the color is on the pecan, um, I think if you can combine that with the traits of mocha, I think those will be pretty nice. So, but yeah, as to the question on the dwarf Superdorf mainland, it's more of a locality thing than anything. You just have to compare them, and like when you see them beside each other, it's real obvious. So, but yeah, there was another breeding I was thinking about doing. Oh, pecan Mindanao. I want to see if I can enhance the colors with the Mindanao because Mindanao tigers have a little bit of a lighter look in the pattern outlining section, and when you mix them with Mindanao, it makes normal tigers have almost a platinum look. So I'm curious to see if the lighter colors of Pecan actually have the same effect, or Mindanao has the same effect on those colors as it does on tiger. So um, I don't know. Yeah, yeah. I think Pecan Ocelot's going to be hit or miss. I think that's gonna be a really that one could go either way. But like we know for a fact, it's gonna reduce the back pattern. You know, but it might. We know it's going to reduce it down to probably a very thin black. But if it can have a crazy aberrant, it'll almost look like weird, like black lines drawn all over the place. So it might actually have an interesting look if it can keep some of the structure while still being aberrant. Who knows what it's going to do to the sides though? It might stripe it out, or it might just destroy it. Yeah, there's as far as I know, there's one jigsaw left at Travis Warren's. There was 5 or 6 that came in. I had one, and me and my cool got into it, so I sent it back because I didn't want to pay for it. Um, which I'm kind of glad I did because Jigsaw doesn't. Jigsaw is kind of like this Moby Dick fucking whale that everybody thinks is just gonna, if we could just have Jigsaw, it's just gonna solve all these problems and blah blah blah. Jigsaw is basically a marble. I'm not saying anything against it. I just don't think people fully realize what Jigsaw is. It's basically a marble gene. It functions a very similar way, and the only reason it was called Jigsaw is because the original one had some decent. The only reason the Jigsaw is called a Jigsaw is because the original Wild Caught had a back diamond pattern structure that caused it to look jigsaw. Is once they bred it into stuff with rounded back patterns, that was all gone immediately. Like the ones that came to the U.S. looked nothing like the original male. Which, hold on, give me a second. I think I can pull up the original male pretty quickly. Yeah, time me. Let's see how long it takes me to find the original male. And there was a bunch of stories about the original male. Like some said it was Javan, some said it was Sumatra, some said it was this or that. But supposedly it was actually a wild caught from Sulawesi, which made sense because when I saw them in person when I'd had one, it actually had Saputri Sulawesi type colors. So that where the fuck is this? Where's my shit at? I've got too much shit on my website. Yep, right there. Hold on, let me turn the light up on my phone. So that is the original Jigsaw. And it's not focusing. Come on, get off my face, you fucking cocksucker. That's the original Wildcard Jigsaw that reportedly was actually Sulawesi, not Javan or Sumatran. So I was talking to one dude. It was like, the dude. I think he was in Java, and he was like, "Yeah, it was one of his relatives was the one that actually found it." So, um, so yeah, that makes sense when you see the colors. Marble or Jigsaw, they'll only do Marble and Jigsaw will only do good with Pecan as long as they don't kind of as long as because they're both reductionist genes, especially for black, as you can see on the Jigsaw too. Um, so you're gonna have to be really careful on how they line up, and I'm hopefully. What's up, Spencer? Um, Hopefully we're going to be having that chick on that's doing the retic genetic studies, and I just sent her couple messages today because I've been trying to learn about multi-gene, uh, like genetics, because there's something called, see, a lot of the things that I call a lot of the things that I call polygenic traits aren't necessarily polygenic traits. It's just people know that term, so I use it. There's something else called a super gene, And to give a quick explanation, which I don't want to give too much away because I'm sure Hell Creek, Garrett, and Triple Threat are just going to cover this to no end in their fucking podcast next month. But polygenic traits or polygenic genes are a set of genes that work with each other but aren't necessarily on the same allele or even on the same loci on the chromosome, and they don't necessarily travel together. So like you say there's three different traits in a polygenic group that affect, say, back pattern structure, which I'm sure there's more than that, but we'll just say three, right? Um, and then they don't, and when they breed, they don't necessarily all pass together. So you could like one gene or two genes could go, and they don't really travel in a group. Like, and a super gene is a gene cluster that is on the same loci point on a chromosome, and they are inherited as a single collective group, and I call it a super gene because there's just like a gene cluster. And I'm starting to think, and this is going to tie into Spencer's question that he just asked in like about 30 seconds. Um, I think that uh, that's what we're seeing in retic morphs. That you have a morph that it's sitting on whatever allele, and in that and on that allele or locus, there is a gene cluster, and it's affecting more than just one aspect or one gene. So that's why you see a gene, really affect color pattern, this and that. It seems to affect a lot of things. So there has to be something going on genetically where these morphs are um, impacting multiple things at one time. And I was just reading about butterflies that they have like a super gene controls the really intricate pattern of a butterfly wing. And it's these super genes that are, like I said, sitting on the same locus, and they pass hereditarily together. Unlike polygenic traits, which they may or may not go, and they don't even have to be on the same area, and they can still all tie into each other. So I think a lot of what even what I call polygenics, I think a lot of it is actually a super gene, and uh, these morphs are impacting you know certain genes within the gene cluster. So with Becan, and it's compatible with OGS. I don't know if it's really actually, because they call them ambers, and if you look at an amber, um, it seems like you're getting an allelic result, but you also have to look at how much just being het OGS impacts pattern, because anything that's OGS, you can usually look at it and see it. It almost rounds out the back diamonds, separates them sometimes a little bit, and creates a lot of pattern outlining. So, I you know I don't know if it's necessarily compatible, or if you're just seeing that effect that being het OGS is actually having. So I honestly don't know enough. That's just based off the pictures I've seen, but we know that Bacan is compatible and makes the calamar or whatever, calamari, or I don't, whatever the fuck they call it when you breed that weird white snake you get when you breed Bacan to a phantom. And we know phantom has a weird compatibility with OGS. And I was thinking about this the other day because Jake posted something really stupid, and I'm not okay. I guess we'll get into the shit talking part of this conversation. Here, I'm going to read what Jake. Somebody sent me this as a joke because they knew I'd just laugh at it. Where the fuck's it at? Oh, I can't find any. I got too many snake pictures. Okay, it was Jake posted. I'm not going to read it all, but he says while we were eating, we were discussing pecan hogs phantom complex and how maybe OGS could be an incomplete dominant morph instead of a recessive. And the reason that's dumb, I want to get it ties into this topic, but the reason it's dumb is because incomplete dominance has to do with how a gene is expressed on the phenotypical level, where recessive, like, we don't use terms right. Like, I imagine any geneticist or anybody that knows even a little bit that listens to reptile people say anything about genetics probably thinks we all ride a short bus everywhere in life. So the reason like this concept, and I'm not talking really not talking shit. I'm just really bringing this up because of this pecanish discussion. Um, with OGS being a incomplete dominant morph instead of a simple instead of a recessive. Okay, so the term recessive there, and the reason I would never even consider that is because it's a misunderstanding of recessive. Okay, so when you have, I don't know if you guys know what an allele is, but allele is when you have a chromosome. Where the fuck? Hold on, I'm gonna break out my art skills. Look out, guys. Okay. Now, I can't draw at all, but that's okay. Okay. So this, we're going to say this is a chromosome, which it clearly is not. Right there. Okay, this thing. I'm going to draw it bigger. Hold on. Okay. Don't pay attention. We're going to say that's a chromosome, and it kind of like connects in the middle here. It touches in the middle. Okay, now this is absolutely horrible, but an allele is when there's a section on a chromosome and they when they bond, they create a protein. So this is the protein. When there's an allele, there is a protein created, and this is like, we'll say a locus or loci on a fucking chromosome. This got to be the worst fucking chromosome ever drawn in human fucking history. Um, but when you hear the terms heterozygous or homozygous, that is actually referring to what's going on here on this, and it's actually not and when you see here like dominant and recessive, it's actually not talking about the gene itself. But unfortunately, in reptiles, when we talk about het or a heterozygous, or it's called something het, we're talking about it being a carrier. And heterozygous versus homozygous is actually referring to whether or not this chromosome pair at this allele has identical genes or two separate genes. Okay, and if it's homozygous, that means the two genes here are identical. So we're gonna say we're gonna use eye colors. So we're gonna use brown. Hold on. Brown and blue. Okay. See that? Brown and blue. Big B for brown, small b for blue. So if this was a homozygous whatchamacallit, chromosome allele, so homozygous situation here, it would be a big B here and a big B on this side. So you'd have brown eyes, and it would be considered dominant because it's brown's a dominant gene. Now if this had a big B here and a little big B here, it would be considered a heterozygous situation because they're not identical. But you'd still have the big B, and you'd have brown eyes, and it would be heterozygous for the recessive, because it's not the dominant gene, the blue. And that's the mistake people make in reptiles is they label stuff, that's recessive in kind of a goofy way that has to deal with what's actually happening on the chromosome allele level and determining whether it's a homozygous or a heterozygous, and which gene, and the two genes that are there, which one is dominant and which one is recessive. So like when the meetings of the mind happen and they were discussing whether or not OGS was het or simple or incomplete dominance, the reason I said that's stupid is because the recessive part of OGS has nothing to do with the incomplete dominant part that happens later. That's how the gene is expressed for the phenotype. It has absolutely nothing to do with the nature of the gene and how it's used to describe the allele situation as being homozygous or heterozygous, and the recessive part being that it's, it takes two copies. So, because I said if this was a big B here and a big B here, you got brown eyes, whatever, and it's fucking whatchamacallit, dominant, or it's a homozygous, and then if you have big B, small b, it's heterozygous, and then but if you had small b, it's homozygous, but you're still dealing with a recessive, because if you add a dominant, if you replace one with a dominant gene, then the blue gene gets, it's not expressed, because being recessive, it takes two of those to express like an albino. Now, incomplete dominance, and there's now for the phenotype expression situation, there's dominance, incomplete dominance, and codominance. Dominance is it basically dominates everything else, and it creates a situation of something like epistasis, which it blocks the expression of another gene. Incomplete dominance is when when multiple genes can be expressed at the same time. And you see that with, let's say, Golden Child and Motley. But this is why I'm thinking that a lot of this stuff isn't as simple as the Punnett square. Is that how you call it? Mendelian genetics. I think a lot of this shit is actually non-Mendelian, dealing with polygenic traits and supergenes, and these genes are affecting each other on or messing with different aspects within a gene cluster. I have no proof of this. I have that this is just kind of what I'm thinking based on what we're seeing. And there was another point I wanted to make, but yeah, with OGS, it's kind of a weird situation because people are like, well, it's allelic. It's allelic. Okay, it's allelic, but you're getting such. I'll give you that it's allelic with Bakan, and it might be allelic with or not with Bakan, with it's allelic with Phantom, and it's allelic possibly with Bakan. But the idea that it's not a recessive is absolutely nonsense, because at the allele level for heterozygous homozygous, it requires two of them, and that's why if you breed a whatchamacallit, if you breed a OGS, I'm trying to think too much about where I'm trying to go with this, and I'm kind of going in circles a little bit. If you breed an OGS to a Golden Child, you get offsprings that are all het OGS, and half the clutch is Golden Child. And that's because Golden Child functions as a dominant gene. It only needs one gene to be expressed in the phenotype, and its expression is that of codominance and phenotypical expression. So let me know if that's making sense. But that's what I'm trying to say. It's like when Jake was talking about the meetings of the mind, they were actually short busting it a little bit, because they didn't understand that the recessive aspect of OGS has more to do with the genotype allele chromosome heterozygous homozygous, and not so much with the incomplete dominant dominance or codominance expression. So yeah, but I'm going to get in trouble for explaining why they were wrong, I'm sure, because I'm such an asshole. Why would I put out fucking factual information? But there's a situation of epistasis uh, that I think is actually occurring in these gene clusters. You know how I'm always running my mouth about how genes shut off things or they do things? Well, epistasis is gene masking, where you have a gene, like we'll use baldness. Say you have a baldness gene, but you also have a red hair gene. Well, that red hair gene doesn't mean much when you have a gene that says don't grow fucking hair. So you have a red hair gene, but it can't really express because this other gene stopped hair growth. It just stopped hair production. Okay, so I'm really not going after Jake, but this is just fresh in my mind. Remember when I told Jake that that snake he just got off Aubrey was ugly? That marble uh, ocelot sunfire. Um, I'm thinking if I'm right about some of this being polygenics and some of it being a super gene with a gene cluster, and remind me to circle back to the OGS stuff. I think we're also seeing situations of epistasis because we know that sunfire has a tendency to exaggerate a little bit the pattern outlining in retics, because usually if you look at the color surrounding the black around the rosette and up into the back diamond, it's usually a little more pronounced, a little more, there's just more of it there. Okay, but when you look at ocelot, the one of the big functions of ocelot is actually the removal of that section of pattern. That's why ocelots are basically all silver. That's why the albino and indos have kind of been a letdown, and you're not getting the contrast you thought. Because we thought, like, if you admit it, we all thought an ocelot, me myself as well, that we were going to have those big black donuts encased in fucking a bunch of orange and yellows, and we got a bunch of fucking silvers and whites and grays. So we know that that is a function of ocelot that removes that. Okay, so I think that the pattern structure is polygenic and or possibly both a super gene, and when these genes are bred into them, there's say there's 20 genes, right? There's 20 genes in a gene cluster that determines side pattern outlining. Okay, and sunfire affects those genes in a way that kind of causes an exaggeration, but ocelot shuts those genes off. So the reason I think that snake of Jake's looks the way it does is because I think you're running into a situation of epistasis, that even though sunfire should be exaggerating it and bringing in more color, it doesn't matter because the ocelot gene is actually shutting down those genes themselves that control that area. And that's why I said I said I was so disappointed that sunfire wasn't actually able to add more pattern outlining into ocelots to bring it back, but it's looking like a functionality of ocelot is actually the shutting down of that. So I think we're running this is why I think this shit's so complicated, because I think we're running into a situation where we're working with an unknown amount of genes in a gene cluster, and we're not having a clue how they're working. But we do know that some are exaggerator genes, some, they just kind of exaggerate whatever the phenotype would be. And then other aspects other genes are actually shutting off aspects of pattern and color, like the case of the ocelot with side pattern outlining. And to come back full circle to OGS, with OGS's compatibility with Phantom that leads into a white snake, I think that's what we're seeing here. I think we're seeing an allelic compatibility, but not all the same genes are there. Okay, because if it was 100% compatibility with Phantom, I don't think a cow would exist because cows are very hard to explain. Like you'll never hear I've never heard anyone actually give a good explanation for why cows look like cows. So I'm going to attempt to do that. So I think the reason a cow looks like a cow is because there is a group of genes in a gene cluster that both Phantom and OGS affect. But let's say there's 10 of them, and Phantom affects 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. And OGS affects 1, 3, 5, and 7. And so that's why. So I don't think that all the genes that are necessary to shut off color that are affected by Phantom are also covered in the range of genes affected by OGS. That's why an OGS looks like an OGS and a het OGS looks like a het OGS. You don't get a white snake. But I think the compatibility for that creates the cow is that there's a that they line up on some of the genes in a gene cluster. So that's actually what I think's happening with all this quote unquote OGS compatibility. If I had to guess, and this is me just trying to go off data and understanding that we're probably working with a lot more than one or two genes here. We're probably working with a massive amount of genes. It's the whatever controls pattern and color in retics is probably functioning very similar in a very similar way that you see other animals with very elaborate, intricate patterns and colors. So that's I don't know. Let me know if any of that made sense. Let me know because nobody's even saying anything, and I know I'm saying a lot of words. You're probably just all staring at me like I'm a fucking retard. Um, but yeah, let me know what you think of that. But don't worry, Triple Threat and Team Hell Creek ROR are probably going to cover this. So we're going to find out what the real answer is because something tells me they know. But yeah, the other weird thing about cows is that ontogenic, is that how you say ontogenic color change that happens. They hatch out white and then pigment kicks in. So there's definitely some sort of color pigment activation happening after hatching that's not taking necessarily place obviously in the embryonic development state. So but yeah, that was my horrible attempt and very wordy attempt at explaining genetics I don't understand. So I don't know. Yeah, I need to find a scientist that actually knows this stuff and can just tell me stuff so I don't have to think about it. That'd be much better if I could just find somebody that knows and ask them questions and they just give me the answers so I don't have to fucking think about shit. It would make selective breeding so much easier if I had somebody to tell me how these genetics are working. If I had a book that explained uh what gene clusters are controlling parts of color and patterns and what polygenic traits are controlling colors and patterns, I would be able to make anything. I have to go off of trial and error and then take in data and then try to make a logical deduction on what I'm actually on the results themselves and then try to either replicate or change them based on what I'm trying to create. So um, but yeah, I'm glad everybody's talking about genetics more. I'm excited to see people, really concerning themselves with selective breeding more and thinking about this kind of stuff. So, but yeah, did anybody see Samson make a crazy claim today that he produced the first captive born and bred Kaiwatis in 2018. He never let you down. Would a Super Sun GC look like a Velvet? I think a Velvet is just a uh, genetic striped tiger. If I remember correctly, a true velvet is just a genetic striped tiger, and for some reason, genetic stripe and tiger do not like to stick to each other. Gavin made those not too often. I would ever recommend you ask Gavin Bow anything about anything, but he would actually be a good one to ask about that. I wouldn't ask him anything else, but that specific question, I think Gavin, I think because I think he was the first that did those, and they look so different. But tigers reduce naturally the amount of silver, and that's kind of what a velvet G stripe is. It's a it's a genetic stripe without the silver basically, or significantly reduced. So I think a genetic stripe is uh, I actually sorry, I read that wrong. Let me re-answer your question and actually fucking read it this time. With a Super Sun genetic stripe, I think I was thinking Super Tiger in my head. Uh, look like a velvet? Probably not. It might. It might. In theory, it kind of should, but I can't say for 100% that it will because I'm not sure how well Sunfire's able to override the silver part on a genetic stripe because Tiger really takes it out. Really takes it out. It takes it out as a function of the gene itself. And Sunfire does add a little bit more pattern outlining, but a lot of that addition of pattern outlining is is usually at the mid level of the rosette and up. It sometimes you get a little bit of that side banding down, um, but it reduces a lot of silver from the midpoint of the rosette up. It doesn't necessarily reduce it as much down into the belly scales until you get a little bit further back on the snake, and that's when it kind of takes it out on the tail end. So I'm guessing the further back on a Super Sun genetic stripe would have a little bit of a velvet look. And I don't know if you can add side banding to it. If you were to take like a Ternate or like a Halma with a lot of side banding and add that trait in on top of Super Sun, then yeah, you could probably pretty much wipe out all the silver, or at least 99% of it, and get a very unique look. But I would use polygenic traits with the Super Sun to do that, just to be sure. So, but I've been on here 53 fucking minutes. I spent like a half an hour trying to explain something. I should write shit down before I try to explain stuff. Um, but yeah, so hopefully me and Spencer are gonna get that chick on, and we can talk about rechicks. Man, I'm hoping that chick is working on really some genetic stuff for color and pattern. I'd love to have someone that can start really explaining that stuff because I do not have a I'm obviously not a geneticist, and I never went to college or anything. So I'm really just going off of data and and reasoning to figure all this shit out. So, but I don't know. Is there any other topics you guys want to hit before I jump off here? We can hit them. We can hit them. And my cat's about to knock shit off my desk. So that's awesome. But yeah, we'll. Uh, really? No questions? Come on, that's lame. Somebody's got to have a question about something. Yeah, I'd like to point out that I don't think anybody else in Retix have ever done this. Has anybody just done live and just been like, "Who's got questions?" I think I'm the only person that does this. I mean, I know there's been questions asked and stuff, but I mean, like, has anybody actually got on and had these types of conversations about retics? Would outcrossing ocelot to other localities possibly peel off the issues with side pattern? I was Kevin. I'm hoping that that can be overrode a little bit. Um, and I don't know how exactly to do that because if you notice the top part of the albino and Indo and orange glow ocelots have more color. So it might be possible because one of the aspects of back pattern is the back diamond width and how far it goes down onto the side into the rosette. So maybe you might be able to offset some of that a little bit by using a wider back pattern. Um, and I mean, there's also a slim chance that something like Kayawati that has thinner, tighter black, but it has a lot of pattern outlining around it that sits on the back might add to some possibility of some extra color. Okay, off topic. Do you have any Indos available? I am not really. What do you need? Because I'm waiting on a clutch, and I'm probably going to sell my Indo Sunfire Super Tiger male. He's proven and he's 12.5% no to how Bali. But yeah, the clutch I'm waiting on is hopefully going to determine whether or not uh, the yellowhead gene functions as a simple recessive because he is not a yellowhead, but he comes from a line. There's not 100% chance there's not 100% chance he's carrying yellowhead, but he came from the tiger that didn't have the yellowhead that Lucas bred to the ocelot that didn't have a yellowhead, but they produced yellowheads. Because I have a pair from that breeding. I have a pair of true yellow-headed tigers from that breeding. That was my pair I got off of Lucas when we worked out that deal. Um, so I know she's a carrier. So hopefully he got it, and I thought that clutch was going to come like this week, and she hasn't dropped yet. So I'm waiting because I bred that to the tiger's sister, who's a bright screaming ass yellowhead, and I'm hoping because we already know for yellowhead that it doesn't necessarily like there doesn't have to be a yellowhead in the breeding to produce yellowheads, but the snakes that don't have yellowheads had to have somewhere had yellowhead in their lineage. So it has to be passing genetically. And I don't think there's a chance that it's polygenic, but I doubt it. I honestly don't think it's polygenic. Like, and what I mean by that, like, let's use polygenics and the effect on eye color. So you only got really two eye colors. You got I think I think green is actually one that comes in there somehow. But you let's say you got two. You got brown and blue. But eye color is polygenic when you have a hazel or whatever different shades of blue, and it's actually polygenic because there's a bunch of other genes that don't sit on that same loci, and they're not in that part of that allele group, but they're underneath on that chromosome, which I believe is chromosome 13 in humans, that will actually determine levels of melanin. So, because it'll also affect those genes will also affect skin color, and they can also affect eye color. And there's like I forget there's like something something numbers. I don't know. I don't have all this shit memorized. Um, so that's those situations where this gene that comes into play can affect. You know, you can have the hazel eyes or the light blue or the dark blue or the silver eyes based on these secondary genes, and those are actually the polygenic aspects of it. Because there's even a set of separate genes that you can have the dominant brown gene and the recessive blue. It can actually, and I don't know what gene it is, but it can actually uh, reduce pigment to the point that that the blue is actually expressed, or it blocks the brown. I don't know if it's epistasis or it's just such a limited amount of melanin from that other gene, but I don't know. I'm not a geneticist. All right, cool. Yeah, hit me up. Who was the first person in the U.S. to produce coyotes? Technically, well, I don't know if you want to count Cameron because he'd imported a female and it dropped eggs. But as far as I know, it was Winslow. Yeah, it wasn't Sampson in 2018. I think it was Winslow in 2002, so or earlier. At what age does colors really come in on baby retics? It depends. Yellowheads don't really color up to like 4 or 5 feet. Platinums don't really color up to like three to 4 feet. Sunfires they don't really get their adult colors till 4 or 5 feet. So and then they go through a color shift because one of the things some of my ternates do is they'll hatch out real dark and then they'll get real light and then they get real dark. So they go through a couple color stages. So yeah, it all depends on the locality and it all depends on the morph that you're working with. No. Yeah, if you got any more, hit me with them. I got a couple. I can hang out a few more minutes. Then I gotta go make something to eat. Okay, what is this? Image. Okay, cool. All right. Yeah, then what is this? Yeah. Yeah, Kevin sent me the eye chart thingy. So, yeah, I don't know. I hope my rambling trying to explain with the worst picture of a chromosome in human history helped kind of explain how we're misusing terms with homozygous, heterozygous, dominant, recessive, and because that's on that allele genome, identical, not identical jargon, and the dominant, incomplete dominant, and codominance. There's a lot of people that claim there isn't codominance happening, but that was the other. That's my other potential theory on the actual cows that you're seeing codominance. Um, well, it's not even that you're seeing codominance. You're seeing an allelic situation of compatibility and codominance, but you're not seeing a total lineup of all the genetics. That's why you don't get an all white snake with a uh, OG head OGS or OGS to Phantom, but you're actually getting a almost like a mix of the two. So I think there is a chance that we're in a multi-gene compatibility codominance situation with cows, but you know that's just what I'm trying to. That's just what I came up with to try to explain why we're getting the results we're getting. Why do the golden yellows headed retic sometimes display those colors as hatchling, but the bright yellow head retic typically expresses them? Well, the I think what you're mentioning is the bullshit about how saputri and a lot of saputri and solas and stuff, they have this golden yellowish head. So well, yeah, they have them as babies, but that shit's gone by adults. I don't know. There was one. There's only been one or two solas that I've seen that's ever had anything. As a larger snake had anything even close to a yellow head. And even if you get like you look at the lesser sunders, the CRMs and bonds, they have like an in betweener. They have like an in between a yellowhead versus the lesser sunda yellowheads. But they also have a lot of nice yellow underneath on the belly, which is a trait hopefully I'll be curious to see if that yellow belly trait is compatible because um, fucking Mason is breeding that Bali to that Siram, and his Siram has like a golden yellow uh, belly and underneath the chin and neck. So I'll be curious to see if that's a compatible aspect of that color. So, but all right, if that's it, I'm gonna go make something to eat. I'll try to come up with some bullshit to ramble about tomorrow for everyone. No, yeah. If anybody ever wants to come on while I'm doing a live, I'll figure out how to do it because I've been going live through Riverside. I think I might just need to go live right through fucking. I think I can go live directly through YouTube, or do I? I don't know. I'll have to look. I don't know if I need a. I don't know if I need something else to go live, or if I can just go live directly on here. I would think I could just go live directly. So, because it might be a little tough to bring somebody um, into Riverside during a live. I don't know. I can probably do it. We'll try it next time. All right, guys. Later.